Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. You have covered very important matters. Now we give floor to Dr. Gihan Saleh.
Of course, the importance of competitiveness is very clear. This is a benchmark that, of course, the state should pay a lot of attention. And it shows in a lot of things that the Prime Minister is very much concerned with that. And, of course, these benchmarks in competitiveness are very important. We want to know where we stand, and therefore we see the potential and work on that potential. There are some good points that we can really move on with, but there are certain problems and stumbling blocks, like Dr. Abdel said. We do need a real reform that would reflect on the welfare of population and equal opportunities and a lot. This would not be done just in one night. It needs a lot of work, out of which, for example, the legislative system, where we have to customize the legislation for the best of the investors and country, and there are many initiatives that should be effectuated, and we are working on that. I always like to look into the positive points. And in the competitive report, as an economist, I always wait for the report in order to look into it. Even before I hold this position, I always used to see that the good points of the report is the volume of the Egyptian market, or the size of the market. We do have in the market a very high potential. Maybe the potential or the size does need certain prerequisites where we can attract investors. For example, the logistics and the link between or among the infrastructure pillars and the service presentation. The central bank had a report issued concerning that the main aspect in the inflation, part of which is the result of the lack of efficiency in the product chain as it goes from the producer to the consumer, which of course which lowers the efficiency of the market. Although we have, as I said, a very big sized market, we are working on this stumbling blocks, and we try to launch a lot of projects that would enable us to use good points of the competitive report, meanwhile working on the less efficient indicators so that we can improvement, not only a numerical increase paper-wise, but down-to-earth, realistic increase. Because at the very end, when I speak to an Egyptian citizen explaining to him the competitiveness and the ranking and the technical details, he wouldn't care about that, but he cares about the real down-to-earth reflections on his standard. Of course, we are going to take the report, we are going to work on it, and next year, God willing, we will have seen a real improvement, because we all are shouldering the responsibility concerning the benchmarks and the indicators of competitiveness in this respect. I thank Dr. Gihan. It's not only the size of the market, but also it's a very diversified economy. That's very good. That's a good plus that Egypt really enjoys. And this, Dr. Hossam Badrawi, we give you the floor. Dr. Hossam doesn't need really any introduction. He's so well known, but according to Dr. Abdel's guidelines, she wrote a paper for me, and I should say it anyhow. I'll not read because I know, all the information. Dr. Hossam Badrawi. Dr. Hossam, I start from, recent to the first. His book concerning education. It's a big manual that really summarizes a lot of important stages in his own life. Dr. Hossam Badrawi, I'll stop at that because every other thing is very, very well known. Thank you, Dr. Omar. I will concentrate on three main things in the report. First, education and training, innovation and creativity, and the pillar of health, because these are the very most substantial interrelated pillars. I'm going to start with the health domain. I'll say a few words, only a few words. I'm very surprised that our ranking is going down in the average age, which is one factor. We are going down in just one factor, but I'm more worried that there are some hints that the health insurance law will change how the healthcare aspect will change in Egypt. That I'm worried about that, because health insurance might change a certain point, but it has nothing to do with the quality of the. So we should not deceive ourselves. We should be honest with ourselves, because at the very end, the citizen will go to get his health insurance from the same providers. So we have to think in a lateral way. We have to think, of course, we need sustainability for finance, which is one point good in the law, but we are speaking about the healthcare, prime healthcare, which is 60 or 70%. And I think that's that's the area where we have to go into. I'm speaking it to be proactive, so that we can say that we are changing the way of healthcare and how it looks. Of course, as to education, all of us, we know that in the political history of Egypt, it never happened that there was such a support from the political leadership to improve education. Chapeau and hats off, because that's why I'm at the same time very scared of failure or no success, more than you can imagine. Because if we didn't make it, and now we have the political power and the political willingness, so I always put an excuse that we don't have the political power. Now we have the political power, so we don't have any excuse. We cannot afford failure. We cannot. And you know why I'm worried also? I'm worried because we have put, of course, in participation with the civil society, a certain vision for education and to improve it according to the SDG 2030. 70 experts have been interacting with 600,000 citizens on social media. That's a big number. I will take minutes, only minutes, to give you what's going on, because if I ask anyone, including those in charge in the ministry, what is the strategy of education improvement, I doubt that I will find documents to read or that are hands-on things to know. They are all presentations and they are all, let's say, very decent work, but I'll take you down to the basics. What's the vision? The vision speaks about 5 main things, 5 pillars. The first pillar is not different. We can't be different, which is accessibility, quality, and equality or equity. And when I speak about accessibility and quality, the indications that nobody would there's no everyone will agree about it. But that means that in every center and in every governorate and in every rural community, this pillar is there, and the pillar explains the gender, the number of population, and the development. So we need, for example, 3 schools per day for 10 or for 10 years old. This is first pillar. This is a child accessibility, quality, and equality. The second pillar, governance. And governance is important because in government, governance is very important. How can we manage the Ministry of Education and Higher Education in such a way, because it controls 200 million employees and around 24 million students. That's the whole of the families of Egypt. We know that governance, which is the best practices of administration, this is the most important. We can't dream of this without decentralization, which I didn't yet see according to the constitution and stipulations. I didn't see it in fact. So governance is number 2. Number 3, digitizing the student, the institution, and the professor. Everyone should be digital. They should all think in a digital way, deal in a digital way, exchange in a digital way of information, and study and get information and results in a digital way. That's the big part. So digitalizing the process is also very number 4 pillar. Is to build a balanced personality. It doesn't come out of words or curriculum or decision. This has to do with really living with the student and being empathetic with him to see the musical field, the art, and I can see this is going on. At least it's ignored. The artistic taste and the musical taste and sports taste, all this. The last pillar is that the output would be or should be global, and we have the criteria. If anyone speaks outside this 5 pillar or is speaking not in full coverage of this 5 pillars in a way that would give me information about who is doing what and the deadline, unless I see this, we did not reach our objective. Yes, I know the effort is there and I respect that chapeau, but when I find that the training for the professionals is very low, and when I find that the Committee of Human Resources in the government is not making any meetings, and if I don't know who is doing what and who should synthesize all this information and look into it globally, that's the important point. I don't care for the details. So our ranking in human resources is low. This shouldn't happen, that the Egyptian civilization has been built on the enlightenment of the Egyptian person, and we were the leaders of enlightenment in the 19th century and so on. This couldn't be leading to a result of low ranking in resources, human resources. Dr. Hossam, I really thank you. We need 3 schools per day, or we should forget that and start thinking about e-learning. Or we will, go on building cement and bricks, which is a good point, but not in education. We need the e-learning, Now, Dr. Ahmed Abdel Wahab, he's one of the references.
He's a reference on many topics, and we take pride in having him a member of the Economic Council for Studies, and he's a member of the board. He has a great impact on industries. Now he is in the locomotive industries and the strategy for it in Egypt. And this is a matter that is preoccupying a lot of people. But Ahmed Fikry is up to it. Dr. Ahmed Fikry is an industrialist, an academist, a businessman. And as a matter of fact, he has influence in many fields, like the industry for the Suez Canal, competitiveness and its council, and his role in industry and his academic background makes him able to speak on many topics. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I will not speak of vehicles or locomotives. It's some kind of change. I believe that every year we speak about the same themes almost, and we do not move at all from our positions. And before I speak on our positions, let me remind Dr. Abla the conference that we attended in Marrakesh about 2 years, and the experience of Morocco in raising its rating in 3 years. It jumped up 20 ranks. They carried out activities through a group in the ministerial cabinet that looked into indicators that was to be improved so that they can take leaps in the ranking. But we remain static at this rank 100. But when I look at the ranking of Morocco, I do not say that it's actually distinguished. It's about 75. which indicates that we have to do something, and perhaps this is an idea. We have the data, and we know how they did this a few days ago. I will speak about two subjects. I want to deal with the first point, that is the change in the methodology, and why was it changed? The change in methodology after Klaus wrote his book, the Four Industrial Revolution, he started to speak of warning the whole world that the technology is developed now and it is able to automate a lot of things. And automation has come out of the factories, or it has left the factories and is part of the different offices and many of the businesses. Automation could be carried in them. The fourth industrial revolution, Klaus was careful not to make people think that automation is only in the factories. No, it is across the board, in all aspects of life. Why the methodology changed? It changed to give some unified way to the 12 pillars. Before, the countries were divided into categories, some driven by efficiency facts, transition. Now they are all the same, which means that the countries have to focus on all the pillars equally, and if they do not do that, their rank will drop. Now, the danger of this revolution on a country like Egypt, if we look into the share, I have two important statistics that have to be mentioned. In the United States of America, the share of the industrial field in employment drops since the 50s from 25% to now 10%, but the share of the added value industrially in the gross national product is stable. In the UK, the drop of the industrial employers dropped from the third to about 10%, while the added value increased by between 15 and 25%. This means that in the industrial field, history has indicated that we have job loss, and we will see that in other fields. Danny Roderick, one of the people, a person who has experience in industrial policy, has written an article in 2015 where he spoke of there is what is called developing nations where employment in the field and industrialization, people go out of the industrialization, though there was no industrial implementation that was big. That is a danger indicator to our country. If you do not look at the role of the institution, will move to one of the pillars. One of the role of the institution is basic. Our institutions here require a lot of governance to pipe into it, inject into people capable to promulgate national policies that are good, because the policies in this country are weak. Let us look at the institutions and the different competitiveness in those countries and the efficiency. Before I end, I want to speak of a link with the institutions. Every time I speak about our ranking in industrial training, the indicator now in that field is 137 or 136 out of 140. Very frankly, this is a very bad situation. The last point I want to mention is the interweaving. We are in the linkages, and our existence in the global value chain is very, very weak. The competitive report of the Arab world issued in 2015 compares between countries in the region, between Lebanon and Tunisia. The backward linkages represents 30% of the exports, Morocco 20%, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates 15%, the lowest in the region. In a country which we have a history in the field of industry, frankly, we should be far better than 15%. That explains to a large extent why do we ask what are the experts of the devaluation, why haven't they increased? I say that the linkages are very weak and our industrialization is weak. It suffices me to say that. Thank you.